Hello, and welcome to episode number 202 of the LSR podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by the brightest minds in all of the gaming industry. With me, your friend and mine, Dustin Gouker. Find him over on the Twitter machine at Dustin Gouker. Adam Candee is here this week as well. You can find him on the Twitter machine at Adam Candee. That's 2 E's, no Y. Hate yourself. You can follow me at Matt Brown M2. Everything we do here on this podcast, absolutely free. So if you're on the video side, subscribe to the channel. Do appreciate that. And on the audio side, a little 5-star review, maybe some kind words will help us climb those charts out there. So I'm going to turn it over to the experts here in just a second. I want to give a little opening spiel. Anyone that's been listening to this podcast knows I've been in some form of the gambling industry pretty much my entire life. And there are these moments that stand out to me when I look at kind of like the Mount Rushmore of events when it comes down the pike from all things gambling, right? It was the moneymaker effect is like the first one that really stands out to me, where you have a guy that turned $40 into millions of dollars, because he won a $40 satellite, on online poker. That started the internet poker boom, got a whole bunch of people into gaming and gambling that never had done so before. Then Black Friday, of course, with the internet poker, everything gets shut down. That was a big moment in time for me with all of that. The staying up to the wee hours of the morning for the New York DFS vote is a thing that could have crushed the entire industry. One of the things that really stands out to me, the failed merger between DraftKings and FanDuel, which they were trying to become one company, which is so crazy right now that didn't happen, really stands out to me. And of course, PASPA getting repealed. Now, Dustin, you were there for a lot of that. Adam, you were there for a lot of that as well. Guys, I don't know if what came down yesterday will actually be in the same breath as all of those things that we know were kind of monumental things that happened somewhere along the way with the gambling space. But again, we might be looking back on this in 5, 6, 10 years or something. And maybe, this news that we get coming out of a 10-figure deal between Penn National and ESPN might actually be on that list as well.
Who's going first? Me? I'll go first. It could be a blip on the radar too. That's the
sure.
Yes. I know we're here for the hot takes. I'll have some hot takes, but as I sit here, I don't think this is like a transformational moment for the industry. That's my we almost have it like well less than a day of space from it. It's a big deal. Absolutely. There's a lot of money changing hands. Is this a transformational moment that will change how sports betting is consumed, change the sports betting industry? I guess I'm a seller on that part. There's a world or somewhere in the multiverse where yes, ESPN gets involved and this is a big deal. But my initial take is this is not like the biggest deal in the world. And maybe I'm deflating the rest of the podcast, but there's a lot to break down in this. I just don't I don't think ESPN and PENN Entertainment come in here and start running U.S. sports betting. I think that's my takeaway, the very top level takeaway of all this.
Yeah. Adam, when it first came down, of course, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of everything that went down here, but just when you saw the news come across, your initial take was?
It's about time, was my initial take in the first place for ESPN, because it took more than 5 years for them to get involved in any sort of meaningful way. They've had partnerships before, but nothing on this level where they're saying this is our sports book. So now, I look and say ESPN is involved. It's about time. I look and say this is a branding deal. This is not a sports book deal, right? You can call it ESPN Bet all you want. It's sticking the ESPN logo onto the side of whatever Penn is developing. And my third thought, and we'll dig way more into this one, is you waited 5 years for this? Like, this is the deal you ultimately went with for deciding to get in, going with tech that no one has ever seen before, with a company that has done exactly 0.0 things right in 5 years of legal sports betting in the United States. Like, I have many, many questions, but I will give you my one hot take. This won't be anywhere near the Mount Rushmore, or even the Mount Rushmore that is built below the Mount Rushmore of things that have happened in the legal sports betting industry. Is it huge news that ESPN is really, truly getting in? Yes. Is this going to transform the U.S. sports betting industry? I would take a big bet on no.
It really depends. And I mean, I think, listen, we don't know, right? I mean, this is all 24 hours new to us, whatever. My take is I'm actually holding off on the hot take side of it until I see just exactly how into bed ESPN is going to get with all this and how much ESPN is actually going to do. Because I think that there is a world in which if they really get into this and go at it full bore, listen, no one has more sports rights than ESPN. Nobody has more ways to reach potential people than ESPN does, period, end of story. That cannot be argued. And so now, are we going to be seeing things put into broadcasts when you go to ESPN Plus? Is there going to be other things that we don't know? And so with that, it's hard for me to kind of give the hot take on all that right now, because I think that this can kind of go as far as ESPN is willing to kind of push it. But we don't, again, they don't have to, right? It seems as if this is more of like a, hey, we want your name, we want your licensing. You're still able to, it's not even an exclusive deal. You're still able to take advertising from other sports books throughout the course of, your commercial inventory and stuff like that. So it really comes down to that, Dustin. I mean, I know you guys tend to be on the other side of this. I'm kind of more in the middle with it all. But let's go to the actual story itself, and then we'll kind of get to the takes on this. But it comes down yesterday, 10-year deal, $1.5 billion. PENN has the option to buy in another $500 million worth of equity into ESPN has an option to buy $500 million worth of equity into PENN National.
And Barstool, by the way, this is like a footnote, I guess. Barstool Sportsbook out. Barstool now owned by.
That's no footnote to me.
Barstool, they were part of the transaction. And Adam, tell me if we've confirmed this. Dave Portnoy bought Barstool back for $0 American, or we're not sure.
It is not confirmed.
Okay.
This is not confirmed.
Okay.
No, this is absolutely not confirmed information.
Anyway, that's like it's not. I guess it's not a footnote, but it's like Barstool Sportsbook is basically shuttered now, and we're now on to PENN Entertainment is going with the ESPN Bet brand, and Barstool going to be its own media empire again, not involved directly in the regulated sports betting industry anymore. I'm going back to what your thoughts there, Matt. I think that there is a lot of devil in the details that we should wait for. But at the same time, ESPN is, like you said, is not necessarily incentivized to do what you said, to push it into all of their content, all of their integration, their league deals, all of that. Is that? I mean, maybe that's been negotiated in; it's baked into the price. But they get the $150 million to license their brand, $150 million a year to license their brand, no matter what. So I have the same question, and I think there's a huge space. Like the ceiling is clearly higher than Barstool Sportsbook was. I think that's the absolute basis of it. The floor of it is better than Barstool Sportsbook. What's the ceiling? Again, I don't think the ceiling is competing with DraftKings and FanDuel. They've put out this morning on their earnings call, they want to have 20% of the market share. That's a lot. I don't think just slapping an ESPN logo on the sportsbook gets you to 20%. It is in that integration and how deep ESPN is into promoting that sportsbook. Because for me, if I'm ESPN, I take the money, I do whatever, I do the bare minimum, but their core business is driving eyeballs and going from there. So I don't know. I've talked a lot. Let Adam give his 2 cents on all of it as well.
Yeah, Adam, just again, it's 10 years, 1.5 billion, could be another 500 million if ESPN decides to buy equity into PENN National. But the other part of this story is the fact that PENN has separated itself from the Barstool brand and is no longer under the umbrella.
Barstool Sportsbook is dead. And it will be dead. And the industry is so much better off for that in the long run. Barstool Sportsbook was the most existential threat to regulated sports betting in the United States. It was the company most likely to draw attention from state and federal regulators. It was the company that was most likely to create a problem that was going to be solved by legislation that does not really help anyone in the long run. And that's a combination of its, let's just say, attitude toward being regulated, and also its brand awareness, which is pretty big, right? A lot of people know what Barstool Sportsbook is. They know what Barstool Sports is, and they know who Dave Portnoy is. And so the fact that Barstool Sportsbook is out of the industry is a good thing for everyone in terms of what it means for regulation. And look, Jay Snowden, the CEO of PENN, who defended and defended and defended everything that Barstool did for the entirety of the 3 years that these companies were in bed together, gave a very different quote in the press release that announced this deal, talking about how Barstool can go back to making the kind of content that it likes to make without the burden of being in a regulated environment. Well, that's PENN saying, we were done with you and you were done with us, and let's just all move on from this. And so no matter what the price is that PENN sold Barstool back to Dave Portnoy for, what this says to me is PENN had to get out of this one way or the other. They had, in the markets they serve, 3% share. Barstool had a 3% share in the markets they serve. If you pull it out to the national stage, they had a 1% share. And so, look, people have said to me, well, what do you think? 10% for ESPN, 12% for ESPN? This ridiculous, insane, ludicrous 20% number that Jay Snowden threw out there on the earnings call today? No, if they can take that 3%, and by next year, considering they're not launching this thing until November in the middle of football season, which is its own question that needs to be answered. But considering that we're not going to see this until November, if at the end of 2024 they have, say, 6% share, maybe even 7% share, that's a massive victory. Because the question you're asking, Matt, and I'm going to throw this back to you because you're the more bullish of us. What is in the ESPN database that PENN can access that other sports books have not been able to access? Or what can they do using the size of the microphone they have and all of the rights deals they have to push people who might already have chosen a sports book that they like to give ESPN Bet a try? And what's the product going to have to look like in order to keep them there? Because that's the biggest concern I have about this entire deal, is that they're going to go on to a sports book platform that never has been tested, that we have no idea if it's any good. And the only bones of it we know are from The Score, a company that doesn't even operate in the U.S. anymore. So that's my case on it, but I know you have thoughts on ESPN and their ability to push their way in.
Yeah, just one other footnote just about the Barstool side of things. Listen, if we remember, and this actually hadn't seen a lot of people talking about this, it was the deal was never going to get done with Disney so long as Barstool was still under the PENN umbrella. Because if you remember, ESPN and Barstool had a little dance there for a little bit, and that show that they put on lasted all of 2 weeks before ESPN decided, oh no, this is not for us, and this is no way in hell we're ever doing. And so I haven't seen a lot of people talking about that, but like ESPN had already had their kind of Barstool moment and all of that, and figured out real quick that this is not anything that we want to be associated with. So again, this deal was never happening so long as Barstool was still under the PENN umbrella. So they moved them out and move on. Anyone that's listening to this podcast knows we haven't always been the kindest to Barstool. And listen, here's the deal. I will say this completely. Not my cup of tea, is other people's cup of tea. They do have a rabid fan base. They have a lot of people that follow that stuff. There are a lot of people who love all of the characters and stuff over there, whatever. I have not probably said one positive thing about Dave Portnoy on this podcast since we've been doing it. What I will say is this, and this might be the only positive thing I'll ever say about it. He at least was very honest yesterday in his little video that he put out. He's like, you know what? We're probably not cut out for he's like, we're probably not cut out for this whole regulated market thing and stuff. We're probably better over here just in the shadows and doing the stuff that we do. And I was kind of like, you know what? I'll at least give you props for that. Like you understand, like, you know what? We gave this a whirl. This ain't for us, right? Like this just ain't for me. And that was probably the only time I've ever watched a Portnoy video and gone, okay, well, at least he understands that, right? I mean, that was something that he put out there. But to answer your question, Adam, so the one thing that ESPN has over everybody else in this space, and again, this is all just depends on how deep they want to go in with it, right, is they do have this broadcast network that they own, right? It is not having to buy time, buy sponsorships, buy whatever on another network where every other book has to go in that direction, right? So they do have the benefit of multiple channels. They've already tried these kind of companion broadcasts and things before. Do they go deeper into that? Do they try to do that do they try to make the online experience more of a second screen experience? Can you stream a game live and get the betting version on ESPN Plus? And does that drive any sort of customers or something? Do you have guys who are giving commentary on the game that is more betting slanted as opposed to just your traditional play-by-play. Like, there are all different things that are going on there. But again, all of this is just me speculating. I don't know, because I don't know if they're going to do any of that. As part of this deal, did they get any sort of stuff with any of the talent, right? Do they, like, are we going to see Stephen A. Smith talking about ESPN Bet? Are we going to see some of the biggest, Scott Van Pelt, some of the biggest names in the business talking about, ESPN Bet and things like that? That can sway people out there. And so it's also up in the air right now. And I think of like the bull case for what could possibly happen, but then the bear case could be like, what some of the takes are coming out is like, hey, this is nothing more than like slap a sticker on the side of a car. And, it's just, that's what it is. And if that's the case, then yeah, I mean, I don't see them making any sort of real dent in this market at all. Right. Because it's at the end of the day, you are coming in at a disadvantage. These guys have a massive head start on you. Their product currently is better than yours and likely will be better than yours for the foreseeable future. So the only thing you have in your pocket is super big stars that are on TV every single day that can reach a whole bunch of people if that's part of the deal. You do have broadcast rights to basically every single major sport there is on the face of the planet. How deep do you want to go into that? How much are you going to integrate that either into traditional broadcasts or creating separate programming for that, for a either second screen experience, or if they want to put it on traditional, ESPN News has the betting version of game XYZ or something, then they could go that direction. So I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that like kind of like you said, Dustin, it's like the floor is raised no matter what, because it's ESPN over Barstool. The ceiling, I think if they really go just absolutely wild, could be interesting. But if they have no incentive to do that, then this could just be another ho-hum. Incredible amount of money is changing hands here, but nothing really is moving in the landscape of things.
Yeah, that's why I'm holding off on the hot takes, because I think there's so much space there, right? There's so much space between slapping the bumper sticker on there and how much we're going to see this on ESPN, like commercial volume on Monday Night Football, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. That is it. There are huge ranges of outcomes and how much ESPN is pushing traffic there, and until we see the rubber meet the road. It's hard to say. I will say that, I'm kind of shocked that this isn't happening until November. Especially the product itself is not changing, right? It is. We're just rebranding it. Like it's like some JPEGs, some color changes. I'm not a developer, but it's not that freaking hard to change. Like, and you knew that this was coming. Like, it's not like you weren't already working on this, probably. So it makes me feel like the product itself is not ready for the load test of NFL Week 1, which if you launched ESPN Bet into that, and the product fails like that, then you've just probably wasted a lot of money. I don't know. But that's bad. I also, just a very small part of this on the background of the larger gaming ecosystem is that the casino and sports betting apps are now separate. And that's a loss. That's not a great outcome for anyone. It's going to be ESPN Bet, and then apparently Hollywood Casino, their regional casino brand. It was Barstool Casino in a lot of places. So now we're going to have separate apps with, yes, there's going to be cross-sell, but that's hard. Like somebody who is on ESPN Bet, do they really want to go to Hollywood Casino and start betting on online gambling? I don't know. And that's the part, again, this is the part in the background. DraftKings and FanDuel are also doing very well in the online casino segment. So it's like, I don't know. This is rough. It's all the way around rough on that front for me. I'm missing the start of NFL season with the relaunch seems like very much a missed opportunity. And you're like, the spin was, November, nobody's gonna be talking about, like, we missed some of the buzz, but we're the only thing going on. I'm like, that's not really how this works. But to each their own.
Okay, so let's go through a few points of what we just discussed here. I want to go back to the idea of ESPN's microphone and its reach, and I want to throw two words at you. Fox Bet, because we've seen this before. We've seen a network have the kind of reach that ESPN does. Fox had the NFL, and I don't care how badly Flutter choked out the Fox brand over the legal fight that they were having, and trust me, they did. Like, Flutter absolutely suppressed Fox and made sure that FanDuel was the truly successful brand under their portfolio. They got into the huge fight over how much Fox Bet would be able to buy in. And ultimately, this past month, they decided to wind down Fox Bet. But that's where my skepticism comes in, from the idea of, can you just use the size of the pulpit you have to be able to bring people in. Okay, so now let's go to the idea of product. First of all, you can talk all you want about what's going on at the beginning of football season, and maybe there's going to be more room for us in November. Fanatics is launching too, aren't they? Fanatics is just about to start, and they're going to be ready for the start of NFL season. And I would bet dollars to donuts that with the people that Fanatics has involved, that Fanatics is going to have a better product than what Barstool has. They've got Matt King running this ship, who helped build what FanDuel is today. They've had time in the background to go work on this product for basically years and try to get it to where they want. And they're going to be ready for the start of NFL season. And how PENN is a mystery to me. Because what have we been hearing on earnings calls from Jay Snowden? They've talked about the fact that the tech is complete, that they were ready to move Barstool onto the new tech, that basically they already had already made the beginnings of this move to get Barstool on the new tech. So if you need an extra 2 months, the most crucial 2 months in all of customer acquisition in sports betting, what are you doing? That part does not make any sense to me either. And the biggest what are you doing is what Dustin mentioned when it comes to iCasino. Anyone who watches this space knows the value of iCasino, not only right now, but looking forward. There are only so many states left to legalize sports betting, but when it comes to online casino, everyone is making this push right now. DraftKings, FanDuel, etc., BetMGM, these companies have hundreds of games in their online casino portfolio already that they can sell directly across to. So no, I don't think ESPN Bet and Hollywood Casino are a good match at all, because no one knows what Hollywood Casino is. And Hollywood as a brand has nothing beyond a regional reach. So to me, that's the biggest head scratcher in this entire deal, is how you could commit $2 billion to your online presence and get a grand total of zero iGaming value.
People can laugh at me about like an ESPN casino is a dumb idea, but that's good. Like, I think that's a pretty freaking good idea if I was doing an online casino. Yeah. That being said, like, obviously that would, one, you have the problem in the background of like, okay, Disney owns them, how comfortable they are. Like, probably like sports betting, as we know, is kind of, this is culturally acceptable. Going into casino gaming is a whole nother ball of wax. And the fact that I guess that would have added maybe not zeros to the deal, but lots of more money that they would have to use the license ESPN as a casino. So whether it was comfort or money, like it's like, that's the part in the background that's not going to drive headlines, but like I think it's a very bad outcome that, that PENN is, basically putting all of this money into sports betting, and casinos over here on the side that's going to get, kind of short shrift.
Adam, we don't know for sure, but sometime in November, as I look and see the Monday Night Football game between the Eagles and the Chiefs, and I see that is also on ABC as well as ESPN and whatever, I'm going to go out on a limb and say week 11 is whenever we're going to see ESPN Bet. That's just my guess. But Eagles, Chiefs, that seems like a pretty good time if you're going to be coming out of the gate here.
I think so. It's a great time in terms of exposure. You only have one legal market there between the two teams. But hey, don't let that stop you from anything. Just go ahead and push it out there when you have the most eyeballs humanly possible to get your brand out there and exposed. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm looking here. I do a bit of a pushback. Like, I don't think we can really equate Fox Bet and ESPN and Fox and ESPN. I mean, the window of football on a Sunday for Fox, yes, it's big, but it's like it's one day a week and it's for a few hours, right? Like, having 24/7 networks that are always going, that can always be funneling things that are also across multiple different sports and all different interests of basically every single sports fan you could possibly imagine, because they do have the rights now at this point to every single major sport that is going on out there. So I mean, I get what you're saying, but I don't think it's really equal kind of really at all. I mean, Fox from a sports standpoint, like, I think if you ask the typical American, like, and you just said the word Fox, do you associate Fox with sports or news? I think they would say news as opposed to sports. That's where ESPN is like synonymous with sports and has the 24/7 reach on 3 different channels that are in 90 million households. So I think there is at least a pretty big difference in the two.
I would agree in the vein of that you can't just say it's apples to apples, But I think when you talk about where's the range of outcomes, it's absolutely a reasonable point to bring up, because we're talking about Fox Bet being entirely gone. Not just, hey, it didn't do as well as we thought, entirely gone. And now ESPN, a brand that we've looked at and said they could be the gorilla in the room to really bully everybody around. I do think it's reasonable to look and say, okay, well, you do have Fox Sports, you do have FS1, like they have college rights, they do have reach, not nearly on the order of what ESPN does. But I think that begins to ask the question of what does success look like for ESPN, right? I don't think the range of outcomes includes ESPN flopping so badly that it gets out of the sports betting game. But I think to put a 20% market share number out there, if you're Jay Snowden, I mean, you might as well just be walking yourself off the plank as CEO of PENN Entertainment if you're going to put a 20% market share number out there, because maybe, and I will say with the smallest of percentages at the end of a 10-year deal, maybe you might be able to talk about 20%, but no time before that.
Yeah, that seems a bit aggressive. That might, I think that official term there might be a little aggressive of a figure. Yeah, just a little bit aggressive. All right, so Dustin, before we put a bow on all of this, like let us talk about now basically what is the kind of order of we see a success story and what the order of what we see as a kind of a flop story here. I think we kind of got to the flop story part of it, which would just basically be this is nothing more than a branding deal, might as well be a billboard. And if that's the case, then so be it. I find that hard to believe. Listen, I know Penn has not given us a ton of things to think that they are being sharp in all of this, but like, I cannot imagine paying $150 million a year for nothing but, like we were telling you, like just basically just slapping a sticker on something. Maybe they did. And if they did, then that is obviously what the floor of this deal is. And that is certainly the bear case for all of this. Like, but Dustin, in your opinion, what's kind of the bull? What's the rosy outlook of all this? What do you see if we're, when November rolls around and we're talking about this, obviously, by the time Super Bowl comes around in February, what would be like, oh, okay, they're doing this and that's pretty cool. And this is working. And I think that this might resonate. Like, what do you see as kind of a rosy outlook?
I mean, yeah, there's certainly rosy outlooks. I think the 20% is what gets me, is like, that's the measure of success. I mean, we also heard Barstool was going to be number one in sports betting. Obviously laughable in retrospect, and even in real time, I think that was laughable. But like Adam said, like if you get to, in the next couple of years, you get to like you double your market share, you're competing with MGM and Caesars. That's not bad. And, the bottom line is you have to make this deal, make financial sense. You have to go, it has to be revenue, EBITDA positive. And like at some point, right? Spending $150 million, if you're not getting, that increased brand exposure revenue in the door, then you've just wasted money, I guess. Like, but again, like, we're not going to grow with Barstool. So they're selling growth. They're selling, like, whether you buy that growth or not is in the eye of the beholder, but it doesn't have to be 20% to be a success. It has to be, I think it has to be revenue positive. And again, there's so much, like, if ESPN Sportsbook just starts becoming like part of of how we talk about sports betting via ESPN channels and personalities and things like that, Pat McAfee, who knows? Like that's true. I
forgot about McAfee. Yeah.
There's value in kind of just being part, just, DraftKings and FanDuel are just part of our conversation. Even, Jamie Foxx, MGM, they're part of the conversation. And if ESPN and Penn achieve that, then I'd say that's a success too. But there's a lot to be done to make that happen. So it's not flip the switch. I'll also say a final note for me, like ESPN, this is a win for ESPN. They just get paid money to exist. Basically, like, people are saying it's a Hail Mary for ESPN. I'm like, what? I mean, yes, ESPN probably left some value on the table by being late. They probably didn't have a whole lot of people bidding on this, but they still get $150 million just to license out their name. That's pretty good. I mean, it doesn't move the needle in the larger Disney ecosystem. It's, it's pocket change, I guess, in that stand. But for ESPN, which is, been out of losing homes through traditional cable, like, it's a win. Let's get a lot of money. Like, what's not to like? I don't get the ESPN's desperate. Like, sure, I guess they're a little desperate, I'd say, just in general, but like, they get a lot of money to license their brand. That's pretty good. They're not, and let's make it sure we're separating them from a lot of the other things. Like, people are dumping on Sports Illustrated and others. Like, they're building sports books based on the brand. again, like Sports Illustrated wasn't getting a huge check to license their brand. I don't think like that was just a partnership to like try to make things work. And all these other brands we're talking about, Fubo, Maxim, whatever. These are orders of magnitude smaller in reach and brand awareness than ESPN is. So I really like the deal from ESPN standpoint. I don't think they probably by waiting so long, they probably didn't maximize it, but what's not to like with basically free money for them?
Yeah, Adam, that's kind of like where I was going. I've seen some of those takes too, where it's kind of like, oh, I'm like, dude, 150 million covers like all of your talent and all of your. I mean, like you have now some of this financial drain where you've had to like do some layoffs and things like that. I mean, like now that covers every single one of your talent for every. Anyway, it's a win for ESPN anyway. Any way you look at it. So we know where you stand, where you think that this isn't going to be some sort of seismic shift and deal. But what would surprise you? What would get you to go, oh, okay, maybe this is a little bit different than I thought?
Well, to put a ball on what you guys were just talking about before getting to that point, the part I said about ESPN earlier, in which I said, are you really choosing a brand with unproven tech and so on, so on, so on? You're right. The flip side to all of it is Disney is in a tough financial situation, so they would have you think, based on the layoffs at ESPN and so on. And it would not surprise me at all if Bob Iger, the new CEO of Disney, came in and said, hey, why have you been waiting so long to take this check? Take the damn check, right? Because you're going to get $150 million per year for 10 years, $1.5 billion in cash. You're going to get $500 million in stock. And then based on performance incentives, they actually can go and get another 20% in stock. So this deal could top $2 billion in value. And obviously, if they're at the point where they want to exercise those options on the extra stock, then this has worked out well for Penn in the long run, because that means the Penn stock is worth a lot more too. So that's really where the bull case comes in here to what would surprise me, what would go well. What would surprise me is if the product is really, really good and everyone comes out and says, oh, okay, they realized we have a good product, and Barstool was what was going to hold us back from being able to maximize the value of that product, and we needed ESPN's name to be able to do that. That would be very interesting, because the line that Penn has put out there for a while is that the product is what was holding it back, right? Not that it was the Barstool brand. Well, turns out it might end up being both, depending on how this works out. So if the product truly comes out there and is something that competes on the level with FanDuel and DraftKings, who have been refining their product for years and years and years and years and spending billions of dollars, not only on that and the brand awareness of their product, then I would say, okay, you know what? Maybe ESPN has a chance to be a serious player in this.
Yeah, I kind of hate that we're sitting here in the beginning of August, and I have to say, like, I'm going to reserve any and all judgments, and my opinions won't come until November when this actually launches. But it's like, I honestly think I cannot give a fair assessment of where this is going to be until I see just how involved ESPN is actually going to be in the deal, right? I mean, like, I truly believe there is value still in the ESPN brand, and I honestly think that the having all of those rights to every single sport there is on the face of the planet is a pretty big deal. Having the streaming capabilities that they have with ESPN Plus is a pretty big deal. I mean, creating ancillary shows and programmings and broadcasts and things and all of that. Again, that's all me. If I was running things, that's pie in the sky. That's where maybe I would be going with that direction, specifically if I had thoughts of that I was going to buy into Penn, like where I would actually be starting to get a piece of, things that were going on. And certainly the better things do, the more money that we were going to make. But again, maybe that's not what they're doing. Maybe it is just take the check, cover the expenses of everything, of a bunch of different stuff that's going on at ESPN every year, and you move on. And so I hate that I have to go, I'll check back with you in middle of December, with my like real take on this, but like, that's kind of where I sit right now.
Well, Matt, let me add something to the top of that, right? And say, if you're not willing to give your opinion now, totally understandable. Where do you see the range of outcomes? Like set the top and the bottom. When you say, all right, let's see how hard ESPN pushes in. Let's see. And let's say ESPN goes all in on this. Then what do you think that top end outcome is? Because
third.
You and I both just said 20% is probably a little aggressive.
Yeah, third behind DraftKings and FanDuel. I think the bull outcome here for this is third place in, consensus third place across the industry, right? Like when you look, we would almost be talking about it as like a big three, right? As opposed, it would still always be the big two, but like ESPN Bet, I should say, would at least be in the conversation when we're kind of talking about all that. I think that's the bull case. I do not see them surpassing DraftKings and they're just way too far behind, right? And like again, the time that it's taken them to ramp up, it's FanDuel and DraftKings getting better, right? Like the ramp up for them is while they're honing their product, it's like not having to actually get going there. So I think third is like the bull case, and the bear case is like, hey, they're still looking up at Caesars and MGM and maybe 365 and maybe Fanatics. Who knows? Whenever that all gets done. And I think that's like also within the range of outcomes too, specifically if this isn't really a full-fledged kind of buy-in on the ESPN side, right? I mean, if you're not getting ancillary, if you're not getting second screen experiences, if you're not getting integration into products, if you're not getting any sort of anything with the talent at all, I don't really know what you bought, right? I mean, like you could have just bought commercials, like, you could have just bought commercials on the station.
Yeah. And third place is a nice business. Let's be clear about that. If they got to that spot, I think I'd be maybe this is a pretty good deal. Again, the financials behind it are important, but if you could have just spent on advertising if you're not getting this deep integration with ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there are so many ways you can leverage this. We're like the website and integration on like, the like live game action, like following a game on game day. Like there's so much you could do. Is any of that going to happen? We sit here, we don't know. And the same reason, like the hot takes come in looking back, I think, which is you can look back on a deck from PENN back when they bought Barstool, and they like had this little arrow like, oh, we're going to compete with DraftKings and FanDuel. Guess what? You didn't. Now you're doing the same thing. Oh, we're going to compete with DraftKings and FanDuel. Are we supposed to believe you this time? Maybe not.
Adam, when it's all said and done, go ahead, Adam.
No, I want to build off what Dustin was saying there, and the idea, and what you were saying as well, the idea of third. Okay, so let's run down what it would take to be third, because right now we're looking at MGM and Caesars really being in that area. Okay, Caesars just had its first EBITDA positive quarter, as did DraftKings, as did MGM. But Bill Hornbuckle, the CEO of MGM, just came out and said, we know we need to be better at this. We know we can do more. They just bought Angstrom to try to build up their in-play with Entain. So you've got MGM in there. Now, Caesars has talked about pulling back its marketing spend. I don't know that Caesars really cares about being third. It doesn't seem from their actions like they care about third being the biggest goal that they have. But we just mentioned 365. 365 is already number 3 in Ohio. They decided to make an impact in a big state right from the starting line. Well, guess what? They did. And here they are. And they have billions of dollars behind them, which, let me do my math, is exactly how much Fanatics has behind it as well. And Michael Rubin seems perfectly willing to throw his billions at this as well. So it is a battle royale when we start talking about the battle for third. Frankly, it's more interesting, I think, from a content perspective than DraftKings versus FanDuel, because you have 5 companies, I think, who are going to make a legitimate claim toward that third place.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's 3 companies in which will have kind of different approaches with it, right? Because you have 365 leaning on product, you have Fanatics, which are going to lean on database and also rewards programs, like we were talking about a couple of podcasts ago, where like that's kind of a thing they're going to lean on, and then ESPN's leaning on legacy branding and what they've got going on, for the last 30 years as far as like being the worldwide leader in sports. So it's also, that is an interesting aspect as well, right? I mean, it's like it's 3 different approaches to get to that number 3 spot along the way. Guys, there are multiple stories over on legalsportsreport.com, so go over there, read them. Adam, I can only assume you guys will continue adding to these, and there will be more information and probably reaching out to all kinds of people to get stuff in there as well. I hope I'm not overstepping, but I can only assume.
Well, let me just say we're strongly considering it, but we have a big piece on why Fubo didn't work out. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
we're definitely covering it.
He's like, what happened to Maxim Bet? This way where he's at right now with all that. But guys, again, go over there, take in the articles. Again, follow Legal Sports Report on Twitter. If you don't already do that, you can follow Dustin, myself, and Adam as well. And certainly anything that we get going, we'll continue to pump that out as well. Everything you do, absolutely free. So we do appreciate the follows and the subscribes and the ratings and all the things like that. It certainly does help a ton. And if you have any questions or anything that you or ideas you want to float, hit us up. We'll talk about it on the next podcast. We'll bring that stuff up. So go ahead and do that as well. And I will grill these two guys on what they think on your question. For Adam, for Dustin, I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.